I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Today is a very special occasion as we gather to rededicate this building, once known as the Kilmer Area Library. It was, and now we're going to name it in honor of James Dickinson Carr. Mr. Carr was the first African American to graduate from Rutgers as part of the Rutgers College class of 1892. We have a wonderful program in store for you today. First, Rutgers New Brunswick Chancellor Debra Dutta will speak to us about the initiative that spurred the renaming of the library. Then Dee Magnomi, our new director of New Brunswick Libraries, will introduce Erica Border, Associate University Archivist, who will tell us a bit more about Mr. Carr and his achievements and ties to Rutgers. Finally, we'll cut a ribbon to officially rededicate the library and invite you to join us in a celebratory cupcake afterwards. So, and at one time you couldn't have a cupcake in the library, but today you can. It's a great thing. But before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to provide some data that illustrates how important the library is to Rutgers students. This building, the building used for Carr Library in the fiscal year of 2017 was up 42,000, and versus 2016, which was the greatest increase in usage of any of the libraries on the Rutgers campuses. On weekdays during the semester, it averages over 3,800 students a day. It's also one of the only 2 libraries in Rutgers, New Brunswick with 24/5 hours, meaning that it's open overnight during the week. And this is one of the things that the students love most about this library. Last semester, an average of 400 students each night used the library. So Carr Library is more than just a popular destination on campus. It's a center of learning, discovery, and a resource that is valued among our students. We're deeply honored that it was chosen as one of the Rutgers landmarks to receive a new name. And we hope that the story of Mr. Carr will serve as an inspiration to generations of Rutgers students to come. I would be remiss if I didn't thank all the library's faculty and staff who were involved in the renaming process. A lot of work had to happen behind the scenes to ensure that the records in our catalog and other systems reflected the name change. For some buildings, it's not as big of a deal, but for us, this is how we get students to material. So it was quite a bit of work, and I'm very, very proud of how smoothly it went. So thank you again for being here. And without further ado, please allow me to introduce Chancellor Debra Dutta. Dr. Dutta came to Rutgers this summer from Purdue University, where he served as Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs and Diversity. Beyond his many accomplishments as an academic administrator, Chancellor Dutta has a proven track record of success in building diverse and accepting communities in higher education. And so we're particularly honored to have him with us today as we take another step towards making Rutgers, New Brunswick truly reflective of all of those who have contributed to its rich past and helped distinguish it in the present. Please join me in welcoming Chancellor Dutta.
Thank you, Crystalline, and thank you everyone for joining us for this very important naming ceremony. The decision to name this Kilmer Area Library, in honor of James Dickinson Carr, grew out of the work of the Scarlet and Black Project. That was approved by the Board of Governors this past spring. As you know, this project began in 2015. It was approved by my predecessor, now Chancellor Emeritus Dick Edwards, who created the Committee on Enslaved and Disenfranchised Populations in Rutgers history. So I'm just fortunate to have joined Rutgers at a time that still allows me to be a part of this overall project. So I had very little to do with it, but I would have a lot to do with it in the future, I promise you that. The committee was charged with seeking out untold stories of these communities in the university's history and recommending how Rutgers can best acknowledge their influence. Since its inception, the committee has conducted a significant amount of research tracing Rutgers' early history and its relationship with the local African American and Native American populations. The first product, the Scarlet and Black Volume 1, was published in December by Rutgers University Press. And I was told yesterday that it was done in a record amount of time. It truly was. And we too had a good laugh on that. It tells you how quickly things can happen. In Scarlet and Black, we learn about Will, an enslaved man with no recorded last name, who helped lay the foundation of the old Queens building, the one that my office is in now. We learn about Sojourner Truth, the abolitionist and women's rights activist who was owned, along with her parents, by the family of Rutgers' first president. And we learn stories of the native Lenni Lenape peoples who were displaced from the land that Rutgers would be built upon. So these realities are very difficult to grapple, but it is important that we not shy away from them. Only by acknowledging the shadows of our past, we can move forward together into a more inclusive future. So I'm pleased, very pleased that all of you have joined us today in celebrating and memorializing James Dixon Carr, a man who endeavored to pursue higher education at a time when very few black men were permitted the opportunity to do so, a person who excelled as a scholar and then as a civil servant, a graduate who was passionately loyal to his alma mater, an individual who I'm sure would be so proud to learn that Rutgers University in New Brunswick is one of the most diverse public institutions in the United States. Yesterday, I had the good fortune of being part of a small group of about 15 to take the tour of the Scarlet and Black. And I was told, I think I'm right, that James Dixon Carr not only holds the distinction of being the first African American graduate of Rutgers, I think he is in the top 20 in the nation. He was 18th or 17th African American to graduate from any university in the country. So he broke the top 20. So, and for those of you who have not had an opportunity to take the tour, please do so. It's very nice, especially for me because I'm new. It gave me knowledge that I didn't have. But I do want to go on the tour again, once again. Yesterday it was their first time, it was windy, cold, and so on and so forth. So I do want to take the full tour with the group. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you everyone for joining us for this wonderful celebration. And now I hand it over to Dee.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dee Magnoni, the Assistant Vice President for Information Services and Director of New Brunswick Libraries. I want to add a welcome, and I'm so very happy all of you could join us today for this really very special celebration. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Erica Gorder, Associate University Archivist for Special Collections and University Archives. Erica is the co-curator, along with our social sciences librarian, Treveni Pucci, who's here someplace, there she is, of the exhibit over here to my left, titled As We Stand Upon the World's Great Threshold, an exhibition to honor James Dixon Carr. The display draws from materials in the university archives to explore the history of both Carr the man and Carr the library. Erica will speak to us today in greater detail about our library's new namesake, James Dixon Carr, Rutgers class of 1892. So please join me in welcoming Erica.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dee. Good morning. First, I wanted to say that I am so honored to be part of these proceedings. And I'd like to provide a biographical sketch of James Dixon Carr, the first African-American graduate of Rutgers. There is a more complete biography in the Journal of the Rutgers University Libraries available online, and I believe we also have hard copies available and QR codes that link to the online version that you can take after the event. I think first we should take a moment to reflect on the significance of James Dixon Carr's accomplishment. In 1892, very few African Americans were able to attend the elite colleges of the Northeast. Only a few black men had graduated from major colleges and universities at the time. Carr's admission to Rutgers came only 25 years after New Jersey ratified the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, and 11 years after New Brunswick abolished racial segregation of the city's public school system. Unfortunately, we don't have a great deal of documentation on Carr in the archives, but many of the surviving records can be seen here in the exhibition. James Dixon Carr was born in Baltimore, Maryland in 1868, the son of William T. Carr, a Presbyterian minister, and Mary Louise Sprigg Carr. He attended public schools in Connecticut and Elizabeth, New Jersey, before entering the Rutgers Grammar School in 1886, and this is now the Rutgers Preparatory School. Living with his father in Elizabeth, Carr commuted to the grammar school, where upon his graduation at the head of his class, he delivered the valedictory address on the topic of John Brown. Carr entered Rutgers College in the classical section in 1888. Well known and liked on campus, Carr's friend and classmate Henry Kimball Davis commented that he was one of the best known of New Brunswick students and held in great respect. Davis recounts, "This was due, I think, to his sincerity and self-respect. He did not want to be patronized, and if anyone was inclined to pass him by because of his color, Carr at least would not notice it. Meet him halfway, however, and you found a first-class fellow, true as steel in his friendship, without dissimulation, and clean as a hound's tooth in speech and in his private life." A dedicated student, it was clear that Carr had a rich experience during his time at Rutgers, actively participating in social and academic organizations, particularly the Philokalian Literary Society, where it is said that he rarely, if at all, missed a meeting. He was also a member of the Rutgers YMCA, the Republican Club, and the Rutgers Temperance Association. Carr did not participate in athletics due to the fact that an accident early in life resulted in the loss of sight in one eye. During his 4 years at Rutgers, Carr's scholastic record was excellent, and you can see an example of that. The Great Book is in one of the cases in the exhibition. He earned among the highest grades in the classical section and won many academic prizes. As a junior, he was selected as one of 8 orators to compete on commencement day in 1891. On that same day, Carr was elected and initiated into Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society. And finally, in his senior year, he was selected to deliver the Ivy Oration at commencement exercises for the class of 1892. In the oration, he remarks, "Starting out on our college course in many things in which our minds were almost as dark as chaos before the infant sun had tried its beam, we have been enlightened. Slowly, they have expanded under the sunlight of truth, thought, and the guidance of beloved professors. As we stand upon the world's broad threshold and catch a glimpse of that stage on which every man must play a part, let us play our part with confidence, ever cherishing in fond memory the lessons we have learned at our alma mater, resolving never to shame or forsake her. Carr entered Columbia Law School, and after receiving his law degree in 1896, was admitted to the New York bar. For several years, he practiced law in New York City, and he also played a role in establishing the Tammany Hall United Colored Democracy. In 1899, Carr was appointed Assistant District Attorney of New York County, and 3 years later was appointed Assistant Corporation Counsel of the New York City Law Department. There he worked in the Bureau of the Recovery of Penalties, eventually to oversee the prosecution of, and I quote, abandonment, aged parent, and bastardy proceedings. He remained a bachelor until he married Lily Forrester in 1915, but did not have children. He remained the Assistant Corporation Counsel until his death of heart failure in his home in Harlem on July 24, 1920. Had he not passed at such an early age, he was scheduled to be appointed a New York City judge by Mayor John Hyland. Carr proudly counted himself amongst the sons of Rutgers, whom he associated with the highest democratic ideals and firmly believed that his alma mater stood for the principle of granting all students equality and opportunity, regardless of color. We can see this in a letter, one of the only extant writings we have from Carr himself, written to President William Demarest in 1919, expressing shock and protest over the treatment of Paul Robeson, one of our other very important graduates. Robeson had been benched for a game against William and Lee when that football team refused to compete against an opponent with a black player. I think this letter represents both Carr's sense of fairness, justice, and unwavering courage, as well as his love of his alma mater. And in closing, let us listen to James Dixon Carr himself. You may imagine my deep chagrin and bitterness at the thought that my alma mater, ever proud of her glorious traditions, her unsullied honor, her high ideals, and her spiritual mission, prostituted her sacred principles when they were brazenly challenged, and laid her convictions upon the altar of compromise. Is it possible that the honor of Rutgers is virile only when untested and unchallenged? Shall men, whose progenitors tried to destroy this union, be permitted to make a mockery of our democratic ideals by robbing a youth whose progenitors helped save the union of that equality of opportunity and privilege that should be the crowning glory of our institutions of learning? I am deeply moved at the injustice done to a student of Rutgers in good and regular standing, of good moral character and splendid mental equipment, one of the best athletes ever developed at Rutgers, who, because guilty of a skin not colored as their own, was excluded from the honorable field of athletic contest. He was robbed of the honor and glory of contending in an athletic contest for his college before an assembled multitude composed of representative men and women from all corners of the earth. Not only he individually, but his race as well, was deprived of the opportunity of showing its athletic ability and perhaps its athletic superiority. His achievements on that day may have been handed down as traditions not only to honor his alma mater, but also to honor himself individually and his race collectively. What an awful spectacle, one of Rutgers' premier athletes on the sidelines because of his color. Can you imagine his thoughts and feelings when, in contemplative mood, he reflects in the years to come that his alma mater faltered and quailed when the test came, and that she preferred the holding of an athletic contest to the maintenance of her honor and her principles. I am provoked to this protest by a similar action of the University of Pennsylvania heralded it in the public press less than 2 weeks ago. That university's premier athletes on the sidelines because of his color. Such prostitution of principle must cease, or the hypocrisy must be exposed. The trustees and faculty of Rutgers College should disavow the action of an athletic manager who dishonored her ancient traditions by denying to one of her students, solely on account of his color, equality of opportunity and privilege. If they consider an athletic contest more than the maintenance of a principle, then they should disavow the ideals, the spiritual mission, and the lofty purposes which the sons of Rutgers have ever believed that they cherished as the crowning glory of her existence. May we ever fervently pray that the Sun of Righteousness may shine upon our beloved alma mater, now growing and blossoming into the full fruition of her hopes. Very respectfully yours, James D. Carr. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Those were remarkably powerful words. I'm now going to pivot us a little and invite us to gather around the exhibition area that has been so beautifully curated as we cut the ribbon to officially rededicate the library in honor of James Dixon Carr.
Let's hold this together.
Yeah, hold on. What you folks want to do is you want to look at me though when you do this. Yeah, that's the important thing. Look at me. Yeah, there you go. Good. Nice.
Ready?
And go ahead.
Oh.